The following is part of a college course based on the textbook Anthropology, The Human Challenge. Written by Haviland, Prinz, Walworth, and McBride, and published by Wadsworth, a part of Cengage Learning.
Dinti Emma ne Yemayan, Asantefo. And I say Emma Winnipebia. Just say Winnipa, we are back one, 10 piano. Why in ye, Pepe? Just say, for Batchma, the new class, where the animal. That's any class where the animal, that's all you're back up. No chima, one on quara, move here, move better than Modity. Entino, Sebema walk on our area near. We chima, we bear the animal. We ya dear, we Beshem Quarano. Just a nipper who share any, your dorsal. It is all you know, dear. Answer a back of woman, a back of you. Now in your hoa, or a swab wow. To me, the men face I asked for me.
Families are the way that societies organize labor and care for children. Anthropologists define a family as two or more people related by blood, marriage, or adoption. Households are where families reside and are the smallest economic unit within cultures. People who are related by blood are considered to be a consanguineal family. For example, each of us is a member of a consanguineal family consisting of us, our parents and grandparents, and our siblings. A conjugal family includes people related by marriage. When a couple marries, they form a new family that is defined by their marriage.
What we like to tell our kids about what constitutes a family is that every family is different. And there are families with a mom and a dad. There are families with two moms. There are families with two dads. And family is sort of just what you come with. It's not a particular vision or package.
Families can include fictive kin, people who are declared to be a family member even though they are not related through blood or marriage. Adoption is one type of fictive kin relationship that can be formalized legally to give all family rights to someone who is not a biological child. Marriage creates families, and families are the institution in which children are born and inheritance is reckoned. There is a close correspondence between forms of marriage and the forms of families they create.
Does everyone want to get married?
Oh, everyone wants to get married. A man gets a wife to open the door. That's what getting a wife is for. Open the door and establish descendants.
What does opening the door mean?
Without future generations, doesn't your house simply close down? The more children, the more prosperity. You give birth to as many as your fate has in store.
In east-central Nepal, among the Yolmo pastoralists, couples are monogamous. One man and one woman constitute a married couple. This form of marriage, monogamy, is found where a married couple can sustain themselves on their own without relying on other spouses. The Yolmo household is a nuclear family made up of a man, woman, and their children. They live independently from their parents. First with their own herd, and later, when they have the resources, in their own house in the village. In the case of the Yolmo, a newly married couple with a small herd of Zomo can manage the work on their own, and as children come along to provide additional labor, they expand their herd and add crops in the village fields. Nuclear families are beneficial where small family units, mobility, and independence confer an adaptive benefit. Sometimes 2 or more nuclear families live together for assistance and cooperation in an extended family. This extended family in Kazakhstan includes 2 brothers, their wives and children, and the families of their married children. Together, they can manage many more animals over larger distances, with multiple summer and winter pastures, sharing the work and the profits. At marriage, a Yolmo girl goes to live near her husband's family.
It's the custom, it's the way marriage and tradition works in that society. It's expected and they anticipate that they will move to their husband's house. Frequently, if the couple's young, the bride is captured and taken to the groom's home, and she and her young husband live there with his parents for a period of year or years until he's given his own herd and they separate formally from the family.
Patrilocal residence like this is common where men play a significant role in subsistence and male cooperation is required. Intensive agriculture or large animal husbandry require male strength and labor and are often associated with patrilocal residence. Other circumstances requiring male cooperation occur in societies where warfare is common, such as these New Guinea Highlanders, or in societies in which property is inherited through the male line, for example in India. In marriage systems such as this, women can be taken far from their families and social networks. Many societies have specific rules about when and for how long she can return to visit her parents. In a patrilocal system, bride price, or bride wealth, may be given by the groom's family to the bride's family in recognition of their loss of her labor and her reproductive potential. In southern Africa, the Juntwasi foragers also marry monogamously. Marriages are arranged by the parents, often when the girl is quite young.
When I came away from Kam, I had no father. I had to be a man and find my own wife. I visited many places. I looked at different girls, but soon I looked at one girl. I saw her under the baobabs when we came to visit her family at Gaucha. She was pretty. She was heavy with beads. When I first saw this person, she was very small.
It's true. When my husband here first saw me, I was little. I didn't even notice him. I was too young to know he was looking. I was always with my mother. I helped her get all kinds of food, like nga berries. But he thought about me even though I still had no breasts. He thought, I'll wait until that girl is big enough, then I'll take her and marry her and put her in my blankets. That's what he thought, even though my parents had promised me to another man. Tell the truth. What were you thinking about me?
I knew I would have her, but I decided to wait until she was bigger. Then I would come to where her family was staying and take her. But her father had promised her to the tallest Juntwa in the world. He was as tall as a palm tree. Who hated him? He was too tall. All the men laughed at him, so he hated everybody.
The tall one tried to get me in his blanket, but I bit his finger. He broke my beads. I said I wanted no man who was as tall as a palm tree with warts on his feet. He was jealous of Xoma. The palm tree tried to throw me in the fire.
He really did that.
Finally, he left. I was refusing Xoma, but now I thought, if I was still unmarried, the palm tree would come back and kill me. So I said to myself, this Xoma is short and he has a beautiful nose. My mother said, he's also smart. Finally, my father agreed. So we were married. and Oma came to live with us at Gaucha.
Among the Juntwasi, the couple at marriage move in with the wife's family and live there for 3, 5, 7, or even 10 years, hunting for their in-laws so that they can show to the in-laws that they're worthy of marrying the daughter. And so it is interesting that sometimes the men just get so used to living in their wife's village that they stay there for the rest of their lives.
Although a couple moves in with the woman's parents at marriage, the Juntwasi residence pattern is ambilocal. Ambilocal residence, or the option to live near or with either the man's or the woman's family, is adaptive in situations where resources are uncertain and where cooperation is beneficial. Residence patterns refer to rights of residency and may not always be reflected in what an individual family does. Juntwasi children inherit rights in both their mother's and father's camps and may move back and forth over time. Residence patterns reflect subsistence and kinship systems. Matrilocal residence, where the new married couple goes to live with or near the bride's kin, occurs in societies where women's role in subsistence is primary and where cooperation among women benefits families and society. Although relatively rare, matrilocality is favored in some horticultural societies where women do the gardening, or in societies like the Hopi, where men do the farming, but women own the land and houses. Neo-local residence, where the newlywed couple sets up their new household independently of either side of the family, is favored when the need for cooperative labor is reduced because economic activity takes place away from the family. This is common in most post-industrial societies. Although the majority of marriages around the world are monogamous, it is not the most preferred form of marriage. Instead, polygamy, or marriage involving more than one spouse, is considered the most beneficial in a majority of human societies. The presence of multiple spouses allows households to increase productivity, ensure access to greater resources, and manage multiple tasks and opportunities efficiently. In southwestern Ethiopia, the Hamar practice polygyny. One man may have multiple wives. They are agro-pastoralists who grow corn and sorghum and herd cattle, goats, and sheep. Polygyny is often found in societies where women do much of the cultivation. In these cases, multiple wives produce more labor and more children to assist with food production tasks. For this reason, polygyny can be beneficial to both men and women. Sego's two wives, Duka and Boro, live together in a single household. They each have their own fields to cultivate, but they help each other with the work, especially following childbirth when a woman is not allowed to work. Duka is the senior wife, and she has just given birth to her fourth child, Tini. The junior wife, Boro, gave birth to her first child, Tamo, 6 months earlier.
Tainta, Tini da imbur kadap. Kung kadiling ko di ana shudit tini. Nansakan kamap. Boro iso ida bro kadinan kaya ko no ano kalbab. Hakana kamap. Dan si iyang ko siya da ada. Kaya na kung Allah bakap yan inaya disi. Nasa suting ka inanuta asap. Siyanin bayi ina nasa tiyap. Iniboro kol mina pente watta sida into shandoya. Shanday si inin ka epa.
Kaya mga kaya dukar barang paham ko nun tiri sa dia kolay. Barang kaya koti. Kodir over imbe kumbeking ko sa kunsan. Dukar kaya tamo koshay. Tamo pul iyang garasi ko bishin da zaga. Anga latinian ada na kunim burkadeng. Kodi adiman na burkades. Nansi ada na kan yadat ko namang. Kidi rati di rati rakida baka inken amin dar gutsong amin inno qacay. Inta duqa mini doji. Amai sanchat ken. Sa adimana adanna kunna yang konda uta at kunno namin doji. Talai kidi konno namin doji. Kaya kalanin fir konno goja. Inno goja.
Tini amta.
Kajilo.
Tini amta. Come on.
With Duka's 4 children and Boro's 1, the family is growing quickly. Soon the oldest son, Bargar, will be big enough to help his father. In cultures in which women do most of the labor and create the wealth for their husbands, polygyny can benefit women and men equally. The women have each other for support and help with all of the necessary activities, and the men achieve wealth and status.
Edi angi adasa gali kita toka anzabish adida nada gali ka yakanka gasha irreda adidi angina anna kidi gala da kina gutuma kya wotanna fir kidan dotta auta kadan imba fakhaiti idotte inda da idotte dama manu angedelen dardai kidi ana qawda fakha waaw wada gisha irreda donga talakha da adidan nan dotta fir kala adidan na warda kidi ular da kidi fir ana amin koye kidi agora fir gali.
Polygyny is practiced in the United States, albeit illegally, by several splinter groups from the Mormon Church.
Mormon polygyny is interesting in this regard because it insists that the ideal way of living is a polygamous family. They believe it is a difficult family arrangement, but still that it is a character-building experience. As one co-wife said to me, and she had 3 co-wives besides herself, so there were 4 co-wives in the family, she said, I would never live this life if it wasn't for God's will. So, there's economic benefits. You can share a car, you pay insurance for just one car, not a bunch. You can share dishes, you have someone that's always looking at your kids, and there's a lot of benefits to polygyny. But personally, I never would live it if it wasn't God's will. And what she meant by that was, the underlying tension in all polygynous families is access to the husband.
Not all polygynous marriages are cooperative, and so the stress factor is very real. Competition among wives can be extraordinarily intense, particularly if wives are required to compete for the resources of their husbands, particularly resources not only for themselves, but resources for their children. We also see that there's a reproductive cost to women in polygynous marriages. Women in polygynous marriages actually have fewer children than women in monogamous marriages. So if we look at it from a reproductive success point of view, there is a real cost to polygyny as well for women.
Polyandry is a form of marriage where a woman has more than one husband. Less than 1% of societies around the world practice this form of marriage.
The classic type is the kind found in Sri Lanka and Tibet and parts of North India, and that's fraternal polyandry, in which all the brothers jointly marry one woman when they grow up, and they have a common wedding. And in many polyandrous societies, they live in large extended families with parents and children and grandchildren. So these are very large families and very large households with upwards of 20 people. Sometimes 4 generations, sometimes great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and kids. And so the wife most of the time moves to her husband's household and moves in with his parents and has her children there.
One of the explanations for polyandry is that it occurs in places where land or property is scarce, so that there isn't enough to allow every son to marry. But these alone aren't enough to predict polyandry.
You've got some polyandrous peoples where polyandry is really vigorously, strongly observed, and everybody marries polyandrously, and people don't split up, and they keep the property together over generations and generations and generations. And those societies have lots of very rich people because they're able to conserve their resources within a single family line. And then 20, 30, 40 miles away, or in a different social class, if we're talking about Tibet, you have people who don't marry polyandrously, and they split up frequently. But when that happens, they're poorer. So polyandry is part of a whole complex of economic and kinship practices.
Urbanization and globalization are producing changes in traditional practices. Family and household structure have always provided the social and emotional support people need to live their lives. Aspects of modern life, such as urbanization and globalization, undermine traditional systems of support as people leave villages and families to participate in the global marketplace. Rural poverty contributes to the exodus from villages into urban areas where people can find work. The Indonesian island of Batam, 13 miles from Singapore, was envisioned as part of a transnational growth area, a free trade zone. Instead, it is home to a migrant workforce of 600,000 people on the island, living in shanty towns and squatting in abandoned shopping malls. The mobility of capital and people has both positive and negative effects. Migrant workers can make money and support family far away, but this arrangement strains family relationships.
Inilah ya, yang namanya kita masih orang kecil ya, masih dananya masih sedikit. Kita tinggal di inilah gedung pertama. Waktu aku kerja di sini dulu, pernah jadi karyawan di sini. Lantas gedung ini nggak jadi saya numpang lah di sini.
Saya lagi bekerja, saya kebiasaannya kalau masuk malam ya, kalau saya lagi ngantuk sekali, saya itu sering ingat kampung itu. Aduh, kalau di kampung ini nggak bakalan terjadi, saya nggak bakalan saya begadang malam, kerja malam seperti ini. Saya kerja 7-7, masuk jam 7, pulang jam 7. Jadi kerja di PT Elektronik, yaitu pembuatan PCB untuk hard disk komputer. Waktu masih di kampung dulu, saya sering ngajarin Wati masak biar nanti gede bisa masak. Nanti pun kalau married pinter masak. Jadi nanti suaminya yang nggak makan di luar terus. Kadang-kadang sedih gitu kan, kadang-kadang kalau kangen sekali Wati lihat tanya, "Mak, masak apa di sana?" Jadi walaupun dia tak jauh, di perasaan Wati dia dekat, soalnya nama ibu, wajah ibu ada di hati Wati. Ngirim sama nanggung di sini aja udah habis gitu kan. Sama sekali orang ini nggak punya kerja, jadi saya yang biayain semua kan dari.
On Batam, the economy of the day is factory work, and the economy of the night is sex work.
Saya kerja elektronik. Saya juga merasa sedih juga. Ya, nggak sama kayak di kampung. Lama-kelamaan suami saya main perempuan. Katanya perempuan nakal itu. Akhirnya saya antara saya pulang kampung. Akhirnya saya coba sendiri di Batam. Jadi apa boleh buat saya terjun ya ke dunia malam. Pagi mengirim Sepagi mengirim nganti ay kasure kala mengirim kasi mana duit mati duitnya 400 duit ada ya nih bu. Itu ada 500 untuk makan di mana pening mikir gue pening kepala aku mikir mak gue mikir kau udah tidur malam-malam nih udah tidur ya kalau nanti pelan-pelan jangan dikerah balalan dulu kerjaan ya mak di Batam.
While globalization extends families over time and space, science and technology redefine family form and structure. New reproductive technologies using donor sperm, eggs, or the womb of a surrogate mother add new challenges to creating families, in both social and legal terms.
Because it's so difficult for us same-sex couples to have children, I mean, there really needs to be an effort to have children. There are no accidents in a same-sex couple. And there has to be a true desire. I don't know of any other kind of relationships where there's so much planning and thought and discussion. We'd had about having children, when, how, who, adoption, natural birth, foreign adoption, domestic adoption. You know, it's this whole effort that goes into it.
Things have changed a lot since Grace was born, just in the last 8 years, because when Grace was born, I had to adopt her in a way that was as though Helen were an unwed mother who was giving up a child for adoption. And then there was this rider that they would put on the legal documents that said, except she's not giving up her parental rights.
Really?
And so we went through all the same, visits with the social worker and everything else. The system just hadn't caught up with the reality of our type of family.
While the form of families may vary across cultures and over time, families exist to provide social and economic support to individuals, especially children. Marriage is a part of family and household organization. The way we arrange ourselves into families and households reflects the larger cultural system to which we belong. As that system changes and adapts to new circumstances, so do our families and households. In whatever form they take, families and households ensure our biological, social, and economic survival.